Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our first press conference with the Allied Rescue Coalition. And those that have taken their time out of their busy schedule to meet with us today, I think you'll hopefully find what we put together is not only timely, but it should have been done many months ago. On the heels of the Kabul tragedy with our last helicopter leaving the embassy in Kabul, it was very reflective of what happened in Vietnam. And those that served, like myself and many of us that are part of the Allied Rescue Coalition, it just tore our hearts out. So we couldn't sit idle. We formed a new group called Allied Rescue Coalition. And with us today are members of that coalition. And really the guise of is make it this nonpartisan. This is not about party politics, nothing. It's about humanitarian effort and saving lives. That is what we are commissioned to do. Those that serve believe in it, that served in war-torn areas of the world, know the importance of honoring our commitments and our promises. So that's what we're doing. We're a group of citizens, veterans, Hollywood icons, and former politicians that have banded together to answer the call to save those last remaining U.S. citizens in Kabul and in Afghanistan. And also those vetted allies, vetted I say, because these are the ones that worked alongside our troops and our military for over 20 years. We owe it to them. They've literally changed their lives, and now they're in harm's way. They're being hunted down day in and day out by the Taliban. They're finding them, they're executing them on the spot. So we are doing what we as citizens in our coalition have been commissioned to do. Reach in, get in, take those out, put them in safe countries. We're trying to work with our administration. We've had quite a few setbacks, and I believe Brad Parks, he'll be joining us here as well. And he'll be speaking on that. But I have with us today, my name is James Bradley. I'm the president of Allied Rescue Coalition. And I have an honor to have with me Eric Olsen. He's the vice president. He also served. And we also have former Congressman Chris Cannon. And will explain the political nature of what happened in the past and where we are today. And also our special guest, and I call him my brother. He's fighting the fight, Brad Parks, and he's the owner of Hollywood Film Festival. So that's what I want to share with you now, and I'll just hand it over to Eric Olsen, the vice president.
Yeah, thanks, James. So what I'm going to do is just give everyone a little bit of the idea of sort of where we came from, the genesis of Allied Rescue Coalition. For myself, I came into the Afghanistan situation during the airlift. I had some friends, some former service-connected folks I knew that needed help getting folks out of Afghanistan, people that helped our mission over there and were fearful of their lives. So I'm a West Point grad. I spent 10 years in the Army. I used some of my connections and started helping to rescue people during the airlift. When the airlift ended, we all had a feeling of, what do we do now? There was a tremendous sense of weight from all of the organizations and all the individuals that I worked with of what do we do now that the airlift is over? I had met so many great people while we were doing the airlift, and we were just trying to figure out how do we get people out. It was in those conversations that I first met James, and we started talking about the mission on the ground is so critical, actually going in and rescuing people that are in harm's way, people that served with us for 20 years, rescuing them from a meager outlook. But there was more than that. We also had to use our coalition, really, back in the States to put pressure on our political people, our congressmen, our senators, the executive branch, to basically make a path for these people to come back to America. That path was closed at the end of the airlift, and we knew that was going to be part of the mission, and this mission was going to be around for a long time to come. So that's where Allied Rescue Coalition was born. It is a coalition of organizations working together, not only on the ground to directly impact getting people out of harm's way, but also it's a group of people that maybe that's not their specialty, that are working to put pressure on politicians to honor the commitment we made in Afghanistan to our allies over there. These folks that fought and died next to us for 20 years overseas. And that's also a large part of our mission. And so with those two combined areas, political pressure on the ground operations and also social pressure, we hope to be able to influence rescue on as many Afghans as we possibly can and help them to have a better future.
Very good. Can you break down briefly the vetted allies, the categories in which, so we can explain to the audience who these folks are?
Absolutely. So right now there's many groups, but they fall into two major categories. The first category is citizens, LPRs, which are permanent residents, green cards, and people that have approved visas. Those folks have a lot of organizations that are working to get them out of country. They have a path right now to get back to America. The ones that don't have that path, the ones that are at the most risk, are the judges, the doctors, the Afghan army, the police force, all of the people that were involved in trying to create a law-abiding and safe Afghanistan with American forces. Those are the ones that didn't apply for visas. They didn't have green cards. They were planning on staying in Afghanistan, and with our pullout, they were left behind. Those are the ones that are in the most risk. They're also the ones that really have the least path out. And the folks in this category, humanitarian parole, P1, P2 visa applied, and also SIV applied. The biggest impediment to these groups getting out is that our State Department is currently not interviewing, except in very, very, very strict circumstances, any of these people to get visas approved. That means that we have many, many tens of thousands of people with visa applications that have not been approved because they're waiting on an interview, sitting in the Afghan winter where they're facing starvation, where they're facing persecution, they're being rounded up, they're being hunted, and they have a very, very, very tough existence right now.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, we'll move over to Honorable Chris Cannon. Chris Cannon is handling he's our political advisor, and he can share the history, our involvement, the early stages of Afghanistan, as well as where we are today. Chris.
To paraphrase James Madison, if men were angels, if people were angels, we wouldn't need government. And if people who govern us were angels, we wouldn't need constrained government. But we are mortals, and we're subject to all manner of problems in the way we govern. And I voted back in the day for the war on terror. And at the time, it seemed like an appropriate thing to do. We've made a lot of mistakes since that time. And our allies are paying to some degree the price of those mistakes. This is a problem. We were incredibly blessed to live in America, where we have pretty much transparent government. We have pretty much open, fair elections, and we do govern ourselves to a large degree, more or less on a local level. Whereas in Afghanistan, you have warlords who ride their flea-bitten ponies into town, steal all the food, rape the women, and then go on their way. And they'd rather live in that environment of force than in an environment where your wife or you have a dishwasher, so your kitchen chores are easier. You have a washing machine to wash your clothes. We have all these amenities which come from a good government, and that doesn't happen in a place like Afghanistan. The worst kind of government on earth is tribal government, because that is local, who you can ally with to protect you and to protect your family, and who you have to work with to protect them from others, and we've created a tribal environment in Afghanistan with the way we withdrew, and as a result of that, we have people who are suffering immensely. I've seen estimates of 3 to 7 million people dying of hunger and the weather, because they don't have fuel to heat themselves, they don't have clothing, their economy has been shattered, and we don't have the tools as international agencies to help solve those problems, especially with the people who are being hunted by the current Taliban that are governing the country, although governing may be too generous a word to use for what they're doing. And those are the people that we have, I think, a moral responsibility as Americans to help, because we have the blessing of freedom. We have the resources to have gone in there and created some stability for a long period of time. Relying on our stability, many people tried to create a better environment, a better governed country in Afghanistan, and we've left those people hanging. So we have a moral duty to help bring those people out, give them an opportunity to live in safety and comfort. And unfortunately, this has happened throughout all the history of mankind. I've been watching documentaries recently on the World War II, and the amount of human suffering caused by that war is incomprehensible to us. And yet, without good governance, we end up letting people who are ill-willed do things like Hitler did that are atrocious. And we now have we have allies in Afghanistan who've relied on us, who are subject to those kind of vagaries of governance. And so the goal of our group is to help get those people out and give them another place outside of Afghanistan where they can thrive with their families and in their careers and make a contribution to mankind. So that's what we're doing.
Excellent, Congressman. You mentioned war on terror. When we entered Afghanistan 20 plus years ago, was there an understanding with the forming government at the time that we would stay alongside them until they completed their transformation?
I think that was absolutely the expectation of everyone who voted for that. After 9/11, the members of Congress congregated on the east steps of the Capitol, and we had people talk about what had happened, and it was a solemn occasion. And in the middle of that, someone in the audience began singing "God Bless America," and every single voice, as far as I could tell, every congressman and woman in that group joined in singing. It was the most beautiful experience, I think, in my life. Amazingly beautiful and unified. And we expected that we would, as a unified country, deal with these issues of lawlessness worldwide. But it is hard to be the world's policeman. And we probably got more involved in military hardware and other spending than probably would have helped actually get Afghanistan to the point where they could organize government for themselves and serve themselves. So yeah, we had great high unified expectations, and those have come all to pieces.
Thank you, Congressman. Okay, we'll move over to our very special guest, my dear brother, Brad Parks. You have the floor, my friend. Can you share your words and your thoughts and your on-the-ground efforts?
Yes, it was August 12th when a young man named Saber Rock Nasiri called me. His film, Saber Rock, about him, won the Hollywood Film Festival short documentary film in 2017. And Saber knows I didn't always run a film festival, and we have connections in 70 countries. And so he asked about getting his mom and dad, brothers and sisters out of the country. That's how this started for me. His mom and dad and some of his brothers made it out. I got a call from one of my former staff members that a young, very famous Afghan female journalist was in peril. Another Air Force officer in Germany called me. Another writer who had been almost assassinated by ISIS and is now in hiding in India. Her family was in trouble. So I asked Saber if his brothers could help these young women. And of course, their first answer was, "Are you crazy? She's famous." And they did. In that process, August 27th, as we were pushing towards the Northwest Gate at the Kabul airport, I got a call in my other comm. A gentleman called and asked, if we could talk. I said, I'm busy. He said he knew because he had former partners, NBS operatives, flanking our bus. And his niece was on my bus, apparently, and his brother. His name is call signs Legend. You might have seen him on Fox News a few times. Since then, he and I have been running all kinds of SOS operations, security, helping move people. I would say maybe short of Glenn Beck, no one's probably moved more people across out of that country than as Christians. And I know that Legend has Hazars, gay rights. I mean, this isn't about right or left. To me, this is about right or wrong. And so we've been working with families going on now 5 months. You know, it's a pandemic, so I can't run a film festival anyway. So, and we've been at this 18, 20 hours a day. I apologize, I've been up 36 hours. There was a raid last night in Mazar Sharif, and 2 other groups that I'm not part of called. So Legend and I and some others in our circle tend to be, I guess, problem-solving specialists. We do a lot of work trying to solve problems. And I am a progressive Democrat. I live in Iowa when I'm not in Hollywood. I campaign for Biden. And I got to say, I'm stunned. And with all honesty, I can say the biggest threat to the people I care about in Afghanistan right now is not the Taliban. We haven't lost one person to the Taliban. It's the Department of State. I have literally been witness to, maybe I explain it this way. I've told people, if you live in a neighborhood and you have kids and your neighbors have kids, and one day they come over and say, would you please take the kids to the theater because they're always helping around your house. So you take 10 kids to the movies, 2 of which are yours. You drop them off and you're driving home and you get a radio goes off and, hey, there's an active shooter at the mall. You race back, you grab 10 kids, you bring them home. And you get home and you realize your 2 kids are there and your neighbor Sally's 3 kids are there. But there's these 5 other kids you don't recognize. Do you try to tell the parents these are really your kids? Or do you put them somewhere safe? And do you call their parents and go back and get the 5 kids you left? Of course, you go back and get the 5 kids. And that's what this is about. In the flurry and frenzy, because I do work with a lot of people up and down the chain, both in the government and internationally. We took people that weren't qualified to come. Once the Department of State's SFA system crashed, everyone called over in the provinces, and we just took people as we could take them. And that Air Force, as an Army guy, Air Force has been the most shining example of military excellence in this whole thing. We took probably 50 to 60,000 people out of Afghanistan that weren't really people that we were supposed to take. Not that they're bad people, they just weren't the right people. And since then, I've watched a very specific narrative of closings of Ramstein, reductions of Al-Adid, issues of passports that have never been an issue in the history of refugee status, that have caused intentional obstruction to getting people out. And they formed an Afghan evac coalition, which I refuse to be part of because I think that, in my opinion, its job is to really tell the story of why the Department of State succeeded when they didn't succeed. And I can validate all to anyone that wants to see the records on this. I've worked with thousands of Afghans. Our flight, Legend and I's flight with our families, as we grew it, we were going to go to Dulles. We decided not to go to Dulles because it was a bad idea, even though we tested it. We took it to the Department of State. It was approved as a public-private partnership October 10th. And despite every effort, November 5th, that flight was killed because the Department of State refused to take the call from the Qatari government that passports weren't required for that flight, which, by the way, included American citizens and long-term permanent residents. And that's when I really became angry with this whole process. And we just went dark and just did our work. I've done very little public anything. In fact, James had to kind of talk me into doing this because this isn't about publicity. This isn't about, I don't want to bring my name in articles, but I've lost patience with the ability to help people because not only are we not going back to get the right kids in the theater, I'm literally watching our own government obstruct our ability to take these people to other countries, which doesn't make any sense to me. It is really frustrating. And it begins with questions like, if we really wanted to save Afghans, why is the only place we can take them to a lily pad in a nation like Qatar at a base we don't own, on airplanes we don't control? We have 750 military bases around the world. If this were an earthquake or a volcano or a natural disaster, we could move hundreds of thousands of people into safety very quickly. The problem is the natural disaster was us, the United States. And I don't want to put this just on Biden or Trump or Obama or President Bush. And if President Bush picked the wrong country because Pakistan was the problem, not Afghanistan. Obama's use of money was not governed. Trump should not have negotiated nor let prisoners go. And Biden shouldn't have left this poorly. It's on us. We all voted. And James and I have talked about this. The shame of this is, as Americans, we forget that foreign policy is important. We forget these people, what they sacrificed for us, and we all voted for these presidents. The shame of what's happening to these people is on every American, not just on the presidents that helped make those decisions. And so we're just doing the job as much as we can. And there are probably 20, 30,000 people in that country that we promised, kind of like selling drugs, we promised them constitution and democracy and all these good things. And then when our national interests weren't important to us, we just left them there. And Legend's niece, by the way, she grew up, she's never known Taliban rule. She's out now. It took some pretty harrowing stuff. I mean, this is seriously, I watch documentaries around the world of all the worst things. What I've witnessed more people die in my screens and in my comms in the last 3 months than I could ever possibly imagine. This is the worst of all horrible things. And we've left those people there. And that's just shameful. So I applaud what James and Eric are doing. I work with a bunch of other groups. We try to help everyone we can. But we've decided that it's time to say something because, I did support Biden. I did expect us to be better than this. And we made a mistake and took the wrong people. And we've also rushed them off of the safe havens in the United States as fast as possible into horrible conditions. We've treated the Afghans horribly. We have one Air Force pilot who literally took the plane at our request, left his family, was rammed by a MiG going to Uzbekistan, broke his back, spent weeks there, spent weeks in America until one of our team actually went and got him health care. He'd only been given 2 Tylenol. And when his family wanted to come to America, we told them, our State Department told them they had to go get passports. They had to go to a provincial Taliban passport office and tell the Taliban, by the way, my husband was an Air Force officer. We don't do that. I saw a clip of Biden about the Mexican border saying, if the former administration separated families, you should get compensation. Well, I guess it doesn't apply if you are a former heroic officer who served our national interests and fought with us, trained in America, went to American schools. Then if that's the case, you don't get compensated. Your wife and kids get sent to the Taliban. Is that who we are as a country now? And so if you take all the politics out of it and just get back down to humanity, what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do? The wrong thing to do is to pretend that those people aren't there, nor that we have a responsibility to go get them. And so that's why we're here. I apologize, it's been a long night. I'm still tracking on this mess at Mauser's Reef. So that's all I have, James.
Well, that was well said, and thank you. Thank you so much, Brad. And then I know that you spent a lot of time in DC trying to free the log jams as well as the red tape that you experienced firsthand and the level of frustration you feel even to this day. But we can't only
work with the Afghan embassy. There's a great team still at the Afghan embassy, working very hard, even without really any governance. And this is the last thing, quick, James. The United States hasn't said what this is. Is this a failed nation state? Is this a state in exile? Is this a new nation state? We haven't said that. And I work around the world, and the world's waiting for us to make a decision. Because we haven't made a decision, Article 15, things like the issuance of IDs versus passports, refugee cards, all these things could have been done. We just didn't do that. And so these are the questions I hope that as media and journalists, I can tell you there's no time in the world more than now where journalists' job is the most important job of all time. I hope you ask these questions. Why didn't we call this a failed state? Why are we demanding on passports and not refugee status cards? Why are we using Qatar, of all places, as a single point of entry? This doesn't make any sense. Anyway, sorry, James. That's all that.
No, that's very well said, Brad. And by the way, we're taking responsibility for it as well. We have a lot of Republicans and Democrats that have turned a blind eye to this. So that part of it, the political side, we're going to be working with in a humanitarian effort. We don't want to point blame, but we also have to hold them to account. The fact that they're turning a blind eye to it means, in my world, it means you're complicit. So our going forward and our mission is to elevate, create the awareness that this is still happening, the stories behind the issue, why we're not moving these great people that we served alongside. They served alongside us. So we owe it to them more now than ever, and we cannot ignore it. Okay, back to you, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to just touch once more on something that Brad said, is that this is not a left versus right, R versus D issue. This is truly an American issue. We have people from every side, from every background, with every different group of people that they're looking after that knows we need to do something in this situation. And what's great is that everyone does have the ability to help. That's the biggest thing I want to stress is while Afghanistan has been gone from the news, not only does everyone have the ability, it is going to help truly individual Afghans if everyone out there takes efforts to help this situation. What's the first thing that people can do? Donate. I know that everyone says, you hear give money all the time. It is truly critical. We have Afghans that have no heat in their homes in the winter. This is a mountainous country. The winters are terrible. People are facing immediate death from lack of heat. They also have lack of food. They have lack of medical care. Every dollar is going to help them. Right now, everyone on this screen from Allied Rescue Coalition has not taken any pay of any kind. All of what is donated is going directly to efforts in Afghanistan because they're that critical. Every dollar helps, from $125 roughly to feed a family for the rest of the winter, to getting people that are in critical risk out of the country and putting them in a safe house, $5,000+. Your donation truly does matter. And that's something that we need everyone to know is you can help this situation. Number two is getting active. We need everyone on this call to get the word out. Afghanistan is still there. This is truly a humanitarian crisis, as Brad said. And the reason that Legend isn't joining us, they were up all night working on a critical risk operation. We get these calls. I get these calls all the time. People that are truly in fear for their life and hiding. We need the American people to realize that this is still going on and sharing any information you can, sharing this video about what's going on in Afghanistan and following the news. It is so important that people don't forget about the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. The last one is to become politically active. You can call your politicians, call your congressmen, call your senators. Chris will agree to this. You listen when your constituents call. Tell them we must solve the crisis in Afghanistan. There are very easy things that our government can do. Right now, we're having a virtual meeting because of all the things we've learned over COVID with virtual meetings. We can have virtual interviews for visas. We can have the State Department expedite getting the right people out that are vetted. We can do all of these things. And right now, there is not enough political pressure to make our government take these actions to help the Afghan people. Call your congressman, call your senator, call all of your politicians. And the last message I have is to the politicians specifically. James touched on this earlier. There are many veterans in Congress. These people know what it's like to be part of the war on terror, to serve overseas, and the locals that we worked with during the last 20 years of Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. These politicians have been silent. I'm calling on them today to take a stand. You know the moral injury that is associated with every veteran out there, with the folks we served with and that are currently in fear for their life, or some who have already lost their lives. These congressmen have a platform, these senators have a platform to truly advocate at the highest level for our Afghan allies, and they're not doing it. And so I'm calling on each of them to do it, to take a stand and come out in support of our Afghan allies.
I think, Eric, and this is an offer to any journalist in this call. I mean, I can put eyes with our team in any score inch of Afghanistan with 2 hours notice. We track things through DC, through the ground in Pakistan, Uzbekistan. We're working with every country in the region. We're working with Arab state partners. The narrative, I'm a Hollywood guy, so narrative is usually my job when it's not this. The narrative that the State Department's putting out just isn't true. There's another narrative there that's a deeper story that people should hear, and there are stories not being told. And I've got probably 40, 50,000 photos and videos on my phone. My phone's ready to blow up. And I can introduce you to people there on the ground, judges, attorneys, female journalists. I mean, I've got 2,000 plus Afghans on my board. Their stories. So my mission in this personally is to help people that are in harm's way, that are my friends and family, we call them our Kabul family, and to give Afghans a voice because their voice has been stolen. And that's just a shame. These are incredibly good people that were raised for 20 years in schools on the Constitution, on this idea of what America could be. And some of the best Americans I know are in safe houses in Kabul, which doesn't make any sense to me. So any questions, I'm happy to, if you have a question or you need a source or you need to put eyes on something, just ask. I'm happy to do that because the truth in this is going to be the biggest victim of anything other than the Afghan people. The truth has already been subjugated here, and that's a shame. We're better than that. Oh.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. You know, I'm going to echo what Eric is saying, and I'm going to call their names out. Those veterans that served, they know better. I'm holding you to account. You need to step up. You need to be the leader. So take action now. Make your voice heard, their voice being heard through you. You owe it to them. So is there anything else anyone wants to add before we open up the floor for questions? All right, then we'll go right into any questions. So go ahead and just unmute yourself and start firing away.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, just wondering for the, you know, exactly how many people are left there in Afghanistan that you guys think, you know, should rescue? Because for the numbers, it's hard to really get a grasp of what the numbers are. So do you have any idea of that?
Platform with a bunch of other groups that have kind of aggregated data. There are 100,000 people, Afghans, in that data set. That's not how many people, that's how many people want to leave. I'm gonna go with numbers that like Moral Compass put out just recently. I think about 20,000 to 30,000 actual allies and their families are still at risk in the country. In addition to that, there are probably about 10,000 people I would consider judges, prosecutors. Special operations is not special forces. Special operations are operations specific to, you know, criminal justice, military security, anti-terrorism, anti-narcotics. You know, judges, prosecutors, female journalists, judges, artists. I still have filmmakers I can't find, which is frustrating from my position from the festival. Those people weren't included in that. And so the SIVs, the Special Immigration Visa process, has really been applied by the State Department to people that are not the people that did the fighting. They're not the pilots or the commandos or those families or the judges or the prosecutors. And so kind of I've heard this from other Air Force and Army, you know, 3 and 4 stars. You know, the person that did the fighting is still there, and the people that work in the commissary are in Texas or Fort Dix in New Jersey. And that doesn't make any sense. And I've heard comments that say, well, we don't want to bring people here that were fighting. Well, no offense, like third generation military. I fought. Eric, James, in service. Yeah, it leaves scars. There's moral injury there, but we're not bad people. That's the job. These people fought for us. These are good people. They're not Taliban. They've been fighting Taliban for 20 years. They hate the Taliban. And most of them this officers trained in the United States. We spent billions of dollars training amazing, exceptional people. Then we took a bunch of people, 40, 50,000 people that weren't educated or trained, that have very little chance of succeeding in America because they don't speak the language. And we left all the people with all the work experience, professional experience, scientific experience, military experience that we spent billions of dollars training. We left them in Afghanistan. So of course, China and Russia and everyone wants those people because we paid to train them. It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to say about 40,000 to 50,000 people that really need to leave that country.
And I think, Kathy, also to answer that is that Brad and I actually have this conversation a lot, is how many people, what is the level of what needs to be done? And as he was saying, this really covers so many people. I mean, it was a few months ago, there was a nurse and a doctor, both females, that were working with the female population in Afghanistan, giving them medical treatment. Their clinic was ransacked and they barely escaped with their lives. They were beat up and they had to go into hiding. That's not military. Those are just special people that were taking care of the Afghan community, their community, that ended up now they're in hiding just because doctors are being doctors. And so gathering the number of people that are in this situation is very difficult because they had to go into hiding. They had to go underground. They don't trust anyone except for their specific handlers back here in the United States. Those are the reason when we say we need vetted allies, those are the people that are vetted, the folks from the NGOs that worked with them in Afghanistan, that know that they are honorable people that want to come to America and be parts of American society. Those are the ones that we're truly needing to go after. And that is a hard number to track down. Like Brad said, 20, 30, 50, I've heard upwards of 100,000, but there are a lot of people. And something that we haven't mentioned is that when spring hits, the Taliban is going to begin trying to solidify their control of the country. And that means stepped up.
Was Masood.
Yeah, that means stepped up persecution, stepped up hunting down of people that were friendly to us. And the way to get the number of people out, when you're talking, even if it's at the minimum 20,000, the way to get 20,000 people out between now and then is the State Department has to allow us to get our vetted allies out.
Yeah, let me add something to that. My discussions with Legend about 2 weeks ago, he said, come April, early May, that they will start their purge. They call it the purge, hunting down those that were sympathetic or working alongside the U.S. forces or any forces that were trying to free Afghanistan for the most part. But the numbers are staggering. And I believe this is backed up with the United Nations numbers, not only from the worst winter that they're encountering right now, but we're looking between 3 to 5 million that will perish over this next quite a few months here. So that's why we're stepping up our efforts. That's why I put my campaign for U.S. Senate on hold to focus in on the rescue mission to get as many of those lives out as we can, because we have a short window to do it.
Yeah, Victor Esch is one of my partners, kind of a close partner. He teaches at Georgetown. He built the FEMA of Afghanistan for Ministry of Interior and Defense. He's a fire chief as well. His job is disaster management. His partners around the world are calling this probably the worst possible humanitarian crisis we've seen. And as winter gets to its full height and as the spring thaw starts and the fighting begins, we're looking at Beirut. And you've got Kabul is a modern city with no fire department. And the electrical power grids changed polarity, and the equipment they built to solve that got stolen. And so soon we'll start losing power grids in Kabul, and we'll start having fires in Kabul in modern city hotels with no fire departments. And that's when things are going to get very ugly. Not to mention people in Afghanistan burn these little clay pots, they burn coal, they burn wood, but they also burn feces and plastic. And because some of these people aren't educated, they don't know the difference. And so pneumonia and everything else, with the lack of food and the fact that everyone from the provinces are moving to the major cities, this is a catastrophe. And in the end, this is 70,000 terrorists are holding 40 million people hostage. You know, UNHCR already has 80 million refugees. Now we have 40 million more people in Afghanistan with no government in a failed nation state being held hostage by 70,000 terrorists. And the world is just not doing anything. It's baffling. It's shameful.
Thank you for answering my question. I do have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. Brad, you mentioned, like the China, Russia, they are wanting some of those people there. What do you know about that? What they are doing over there?
I know a lot. Some I can't say. I do know, at Bagram Air Base, the Chinese have been on the ground for quite a while. We've actually had photos of them. I know that there are drones. I'm not sure if they're Pakistan or Chinese drones, but they're Wingwing drones on the ground in Bagram, which means that the air control of, Afghanistan proper is under the control of the Pakistanis and the Chinese. I know that Chinese uniformed people and Pakistanis, even people from Turkey, we have witness of them working in the airports. So in the open, not talking. I can't judge, whether that's coincidence or it's collaboration, but they're all there and they all know each other are there. And so, I think the line has to be drawn between what's happening now in Ukraine, what's happening soon, I'm sure, to Taiwan. The last, I blessed the Great Belt and Road Film Festival for the Chinese government 2017 at the Shanghai Film Festival. And it was very clear after a couple of days, the Ministry of New Culture, working with their different governmental groups, the Belt and Road is a real deal. And I love my Chinese filmmakers. I have friends all across China. The government, however, has a different mission here. And Afghanistan was really the last stumbling block of a clear path through to Europe. And we were the last people in the way, and now we're gone. And so within literally weeks, they were already moving equipment in for pipelining. And we've had people advise on that for months. And that's concerning. The Russians, however, haven't really been that active, and they're a little busy in Ukraine right now. But and this whole quote that Biden used, it does affect me. This whole, the empire graveyard of empires. That quote is designed. That's just BS. That quote is narrative for excuses for people's missions that they should have been in the first place. That quote is really designed to deflect the narrative of what's really happening there. The Afghan people haven't done anything. Pakistan, Russia, China, United States. I mean, this is our mess collectively. And China has had eyes on Afghanistan for a long time, not just for the mineral deposits, but it opens the road through to Turkey and to Europe as a clear pipeline for the Great Belt. The Great Belt and Road is now open.
It's a great question, Kathy.
James, I've got a question in the chat from Linda, and it's a great question, so I want to bring it up. And the question is, in short, has there been any open letters to the president? Has there been any outreach? And for that, I want to answer it. I put a link in the chat, and I will actually put it as a link to everyone. And the reason that I'm going to put it in there is it's under the heading of afghanevac.org. And what this is, it's not just an open letter from them. There was a group of many, many, many organizations, veteran-led and not, that got together back east a couple months ago, and they came up with the details of this letter. It is a very well done letter. We had representatives in the group, and it covers so much of what needs to be done. And truly, the solutions are not that difficult, but they're not being done. And honestly, I would love for everyone to look at the letter, look at some of the points that are made in the letter, because it lays out what truly it is a blueprint that all the president would have to do is follow, and it would solve 95% of our problems right there.
And that gets back to the point that this could have been solved a long time ago. If anyone would like a list of all the appropriations and allocations through to OMB that are there that aren't being spent for reasons that were very specifically drafted into the language of the bills so that they wouldn't be spent. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist when you lay the whole thing out to look at it. The administration wanted the door closed in Afghanistan, and they closed the door. It's that simple. And I'll be as brazen to say I think the Department of State's lying to the American people, flat out. Lies of omission are lies, and we don't do that. Especially as Democrats, we're not supposed to do that. I thought this was going to be a different kind of administration. We're not telling the truth. We have obstructed and closed the funnel. We're restricting people's access, and we're restricting the way people are being told the story. And that is not what America's about. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. We don't do that. And we certainly don't send if this were France in World War II, and we had to send French pilots' wives to the Germans to get passports to leave France, that's what this is. Except they're not white. They're brown people. And not to say it, but there's a lot of anti-Islamic thoughts and just anti, kind of white national stuff in America. It's not okay. These people aren't that. These people aren't terrorists. They're moms and dads. They're doctors. And we have one doctor, the most heroic human being I've ever seen in my life. And he's done things that he should have 10 movies about him. Legend should have his own damn movie. Legend, what he's done is unbelievable. He went back and saved people. And he's still doing it. But right now it doesn't serve our national story somehow, I guess. We're just not telling the truth. And and here's the sad part, Eric. I work in 70 countries. The whole damn world knows that we're lying. They all know what we did. It's not a secret. It's just a secret to Americans because no one's talking about it in the media. And I talk to most of the major networks. I send stuff all the time. If anyone would like to be on my list of things I send updates to, I send updates to dozens of journalists, both from major networks and papers and magazines. I don't ask my name on it. It just here's information so you can know what's going on. And yet I don't see any of it in the news. And I'm literally watching right now a young kid that Legend pulled out of a well because they took pictures of the well to blackmail the family. We just got the kid out. Legend did that. And I'm watching another family right now. I'm chatting with a wife who's in tears because they were raided yesterday and their kid was taken. And no one cares. That's not what we are.
Oh, we do, Brad. We care, and those that are covering the story care. Could you speak to, you pointed out something that there was money set aside through the OMB. How much was set aside or designated for this, and where is it now?
So I'll give James Young from this group Freedom Birds in Atlanta the credit for this. But when the president allocates money, it's like your mom saying you can go to the movies for $10. And then when it gets appropriated by Congress, it's your dad giving the money out of the wallet. So it's been allocated and it's been appropriated to the Office of Management and the budget. And it's not being spent. It's billions of dollars for resettlement. And it's in these big pools of cash that people aren't accessing because of the metrics around how and why it can be spent are so obstructionist. It doesn't meet the need of the emergency. The purpose of the emergency is to save people. It's not to do paperwork, red tape. And that's not okay. And the government taking credit for how fast they're resettling people off of these, that is a lie. These people don't want to be rushed into Section 8 housing. They need time to acclimate to our culture. And we're literally pushing, we've closed all the bases except for I think New Jersey's the last base will be open. We've pushed these people out into our culture faster than we should have without vetting the NGOs. I'm getting 2-3 complaints a day from Afghans that their payments are being sent to NGOs and aren't getting their money. I have 3 dozen people that a partner Russ sent me that are in New Jersey that are now in Section 8 housing. They've been in the country for 4 months. They haven't gotten one check from the government and they have no one to complain to because they're told not to do that. They're told not to question the administration. What is that about?
Yeah,
so
I want to.
Yeah,
Brad, and I think what you bring up, and you touched on it a couple times, and I want to make sure that it's very clear for everyone, is that there is money allocated. There are systems in place. There are things that we have done. There are virtual visa process. All of these things we know how to do, we have done before, and they're easy. What is so disheartening to me, and Brad, you've mentioned it is to all of us, is that it's not that the State Department or the federal government is not helping. It's that they're actively hindering. And I think that's a message that really needs to go out there, is the State Department, Congress through their financial allocations, all have the ability to help. But what even more, they have the ability to get out of the way and let private organizations do it, even if they don't want to help. But right now, they're even stymieing those efforts. Like Brad, what you were talking about with the flight that was going out, that it was paid for. It was all coordinated through totally private organizations, and the State Department got in the way of allowing that flight to go through.
Correct.
That's the level
that flight was granted with permission of His Excellency, the CEO of Qatar Air. I mean, it's a Hollywood thing. It's a weird world I work in, but royals talk and people at State Department talk. And as much as I'm frustrated with State Department, there's a core of people at State Department that are working night and day, and they are beleaguered and they are disheartened and they are frustrated. There are officers of these safe havens in the U.S. literally in counseling for suicidal thoughts because they're seeing this travesty happening and no one's talking about it. And they meet these people and see these are good people, and we're treating them horribly. And we shouldn't be doing this. This is not what we're about. And the world is watching. And the American people have to realize we're being judged right now. And if 2 million Afghans die this winter because of us, it's going to be our fault no matter what happened there. No one's going to blame the Taliban. They're going to blame us. And so we should wake up, Democrats and Republicans, and try to help resolve this before we lose a lot of lives. And this is way worse than Syria. And I have friends that have worked in depth in Syria, and this is 10 times worse than what Syria was. And that was 1 million people died.
It's not even on the radar, Brad.
No, it's not.
Okay, we're coming up on the top of the hour. Any other questions before we wish everyone well and send you off to send off the great message that we're saving lives?
And we are saving lives. 3 Americans last night, as a matter of fact.
God bless you, brother. You're amazing.
And I mean, my other brother legend. I'm just the guy. I'm just the guy at the desk, the tired guy.
Yeah. Well, I know. Kathy, any more other questions? I think we have Epoch Times. Did you have any questions before we bring this conference to a close? And there was one, I guess, special guest that you had, Eric.
So we had someone join a little bit late. Sharina, looks like. Welcome. Do you have a question?
I'm just listening and enjoying all the speakers that are speaking right now. Sorry, I jumped in late, but I'm glad to be a part of this. And I can see that you guys are doing amazing things, and I definitely want to be involved with this.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
are.
Well, thanks for coming in. And if you throw your email into the chat box, we will try to get the video of this over to you so you can see the entire interview.
That would be perfect. I would appreciate that. I was trying to get the word out about this, but I was having difficulties getting the Zoom onto Facebook. So yeah, so we'll have to work on that. That'll be something we need to work on because we need to get the word out here about your work and what you guys are doing, and to get people involved. And I'm here in Placer County, and I'm a part of a few really good organizations, and they definitely need to be aware and get involved.
Thank you. Well, everyone has their marching orders. We have so much to do in so little time. So get the message out there, share it worldwide. Now's the time to get active. Now's the time to save lives. And I want to thank everyone that's taken the time out of the day to listen and engage with us. Asking those questions are really important. Hopefully you're a little bit more informed what our mission is and what's at stake here. It's not only our reputation. I can care less about a reputation. It's a human life. A human life. We need to save as many as we can. And I thank you for your time. God bless you all.